am dermatologist Dr. Leslie Bauman, and I am here today with a really exciting guest and an old friend. This is Richard Parker from Rationale in Australia. And Richard and I met many years ago when I was a speaker at the Society of Cosmetic Dermatology or the Dermatology Society, I forget which, in Australia. And we've been great friends ever since, and I'm so excited to have him here on the show today. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Leslie. It's wonderful to be here.
It's so fun. So Richard we always joke that he's a chef and I am a food critic. He is the cosmetic chemist who formulates fabulous products, and I'm somebody who likes to try out and test and talk about fabulous products. So it's kind of the same relationship as a chef and a food critic. So we're here today and we are going to get to learn how he comes up with his wonderful ideas. His products are very, very elegant, and they're huge in Australia. They're the number one physician dispense brand in Australia. And now they're in the U.S., and we're so happy that we were able to sell them as Skin Tech Solutions. But my goal today is for you to learn about how he got all these great ideas for his products. So great. Richard, why don't we start out with, tell us, how did you get involved? How did you become this wonderful cosmetic chemist?
Well, it's a well-known statistic now, Leslie, around the world that 80% of facial aging is caused by the sun. And we know that the sun gives us life, but it also damages our skin. So I think I've always been interested in skin from my teenage years because I was a competitive swimmer. I grew up basically in the pool, on the beach, and my whole life I was in the sun as a child. So at about 14, my family had to take me to see our local dermatologist. So I think from that point on, I was working towards a career either in medicine or in medicinal chemistry. I think I was better suited to medicinal chemistry. I'm a born researcher. That's what I love to do, is read journals and create prototypes. So I went into the formulation side of skincare right then and there. And from that experience, I think we learned that the skin has these innate responses to protect itself from the sun. And my first job out of college was working with a group of dermatologists who were resurfacing the entire skin. So basically ablating the entire epidermis of very severe sun-damaged patients. They couldn't tolerate a lot of very common ingredients in skincare. So my task was to create them a perfect sunscreen that they could use that protected them from the sun without allergic responses. And that's where my love affair with these 6 skin systems that we talk about all the time, but also with zinc oxide sunscreens. 35 years ago, I started working with zinc oxide, and it was a long journey from there.
Right. Well, I remember those CO2 lasers. I was a dermatology resident back in the 90s when everyone was ablating their face, and we had patients who would take 6 months to heal, and it was very difficult to find a sunscreen that wouldn't irritate. And then in Miami, the sun is so strong. Yeah. And you're in Australia where melanoma rates are so high. So sunscreen is very critical in both places where we live. Tell us about your philosophy and what these 6 pillars are.
So 35 years ago, when we started all of this research into sun damage and the understanding that 80% of facial aging is caused by the sun, we wanted to study, what does the skin look like in a state of optimal health? Now, remember, our skin's defense systems are still have not caught up with the amount of time we're actually living now. So by about 30, it all starts to break down. We're much more susceptible to sun damage than we were even when we were young. And we're living 3 times longer than people were 100 years ago. So I have this theory, Leslie, that our evolutionary skin defense mechanisms are lagging behind how long we're actually living. And what I wanted to do was understand, how does the skin protect itself from environmental or sun damage naturally? What goes wrong? And how can we try to restore that or augment it or prevent it being shut down? So we devised a system that we now call the Essential 6. And what it means is that if you study human skin in a state of optimal health, it essentially does 3 things in the morning to protect itself and it does 3 things at night to repair itself. And this is well documented in the medical literature. So in the morning, our skin has an immune system, becomes very active during the day, and its job is to protect the skin from, toxins, sun damage, free radicals, and so on. So there's an immune system. The skin also has an antioxidant repair system. So as you know, there's more to skin antioxidants than vitamin C. There's a whole bunch of enzymes, and there's a whole bunch of minerals, and there's a whole bunch of proteins, and a whole bunch of vitamins and minerals and so on that protect the skin. And the antioxidant system is very, very important. It's, we call it our endogenous antioxidant system. So it lives naturally in the skin, but it becomes depleted as we age. And by about 35, our antioxidants, as you know, are suppressed. The third thing the skin does, it has its own sun protection system. So using chemicals like uracanic acid, for example, melanin, which is our skin pigment, to protect itself from the sun. So that's our skin's protective system. And they're the three, I guess we call them systems that the skin uses every morning to protect itself. The trouble is that they become overwhelmed very, very easily. And then we end up with a situation which we describe as photoimmunosuppression. So when the skin's immune system is depressed by the sun, we can't fight back. And the skin becomes overwhelmed, and that's where premature aging and skin cancer and so on. So in the morning, 3 things to protect our skin from sun damage. At night, the skin goes into repair mode. So we talk about this diurnal, which is the daily rhythm, and then we talk about the nocturnal rhythm, which is at night. So at night, the skin does some interesting things. It changes its level of activity to more of a repair mode. And what happens in that repair mode is the skin tries to rebuild its barrier. So it starts synthesizing all our barrier lipids and reinforcing the barrier proteins that keratinocytes create that become the corneocytes on the surface. And that's the first thing. The second thing the skin does is that it tries to readjust its pH. So skin is naturally acidic, as you know, but sun damage patients, interestingly, we found their skin was very alkaline. So just by reacidifying the stratum corneum from alkaline down to a healthier acidic level, we find that all of the skin's repair processes are optimized, from barrier repair and DNA repair and so on. And then the third system is what we call the DNA repair system. So as you know, skin has the capacity to repair its own DNA to a certain extent, and it uses vitamin A and various other compounds to enhance that DNA repair system. But it too becomes overwhelmed as we age and as sun damage kicks in. So we need to reinforce the skin's DNA repair systems, which occurs through a synergy of vitamin A with DNA repair enzymes found naturally in the skin. So those 6 steps. So in the morning, we have immune protection, then we have antioxidant protection, then sun protection. And at night, we have barrier repair, we have pH repair, and we have DNA repair.
And that circadian rhythm, I love reading all the articles about that. There's so many articles that look at that, and people don't understand. That's why their skincare products in the morning have to be different than their skincare products at night. For example, you wouldn't use a retinol in the daytime because you want to use that at night.
Exactly. And if you do the right things, the skin will recognize and upload and use those active ingredients.
And one of the ways I explain to my patients about how the sun affects your immune system is a lot of people get cold sores when they go in the sun, and that's because the sun immunosuppresses them, and then the herpes virus can come out and give them a cold sore. Well, it's the same idea. When we go in the sun, we just get immunosuppressed, and all kinds of things can happen. So it's not just about skin cancer and aging. There's actually all kinds of things that can happen when you go in the sun. Or just our natural defenses are down whenever we get sun. So it's very, very important to find a sunscreen. I always tell people that the best sunscreen out there is one that you're going to use every day. Because the problem with most of the sunscreens in the U.S. is they're either sticky, or they feel greasy, or they're heavy, or you feel like your skin doesn't breathe, you can't sweat. I don't know, in Miami with the humidity, I hate that heavy sunscreen feeling. And I remember when I was in Australia, you gave me a sunscreen that was like a luxurious makeup foundation. I felt glamorous in it, but it was a sunscreen, and the SPF was high. So is that the same sunscreen that you're now bringing to the U.S.? Because you were just testing it at the time. It was in a little test tube, so I don't know what it was called. It didn't have a name yet. Is that the same one that you're coming out with now?
That Zinc sunscreen, so the number 3 tinted serum it's called, that's 35 years ago. So my brief with these sun damaged patients that we were resurfacing with lasers, my brief was to create a zinc oxide sunscreen that everybody could use. And so I did that. But it was thick and it was pasty and it was white and the patients hated it. I'm like, what do you mean you don't like it? Because back then I was naive. If we give the patient what they need, they're going to be happy. We also have to give the patients what they want, which is the interesting thing. And everybody wants an elegant sunscreen, something that makes their skin look dewy and glowy and luminous, something that's not white, something that's not thick and heavy and makes them look pasty. And that became my wake-up call to, okay, it's not just about efficacy, it's also about cosmetic elegance, and it's also about the patient self-selecting, I love this, I want to use this. And that was such a revelation for me. So I realized that you've got to engage the left and the right brain when you formulate skincare products.
And I think that is what makes you so good at what you do, is you think about the experience of the consumer using the product. So even though you have these highly functional brands that work and do things, they also feel luxurious and they're fun to wear. And that's, I think, why your sunscreen feels like makeup. Is it a makeup or is it a sunscreen? Well, luckily, it's kind of both.
It's both. Yeah, exactly. And so, it's so true. People love to use it, so they use it. It's fundamental, and yet I think in dermatology, sometimes we forget that this is a living interface, that we're asking people to do something that affects the way people are going to respond to them and how they feel about themselves. And so important that when they look in the mirror, what we ask them to do makes them look good. And then they're going to be more likely to repeat the behavior, which is using the right products on their skin.
And you have so many good products besides just sunscreen. But while we're talking about sunscreen, I wanted to tell you that you sent me some of your new sunscreens that have all the different colors.
Yes.
I love it. It's 6 different colors, right?
Yes.
To match the different Fitzpatrick skin types. Well, I'm doing something fun with it. I'm using it to contour my face. Have you seen all the makeup videos where you use a lighter concealer here or a darker concealer there? I'm doing that with your sunscreen.
Oh, I love it.
I can hide these little gels by putting a little bit darker sunscreen right here. And if I want to, make this stand out, I'll put a lighter sunscreen. So it's a lot of fun. You have the perfect combination of colors to play around with it like that.
And people are writing to me and telling me that they're doing that, which is wonderful because you're putting something on your skin that's good for your skin. You're playing with your appearance, and we love doing that. But just make sure you're using something that's good for your skin. And that was part of our aim. We wanted to make sure we covered every skin color on the planet, but also gave people some options to play and to customize. And, every woman I know does that. They mess around and mix lipsticks, and they put sunscreen and foundations together, which, by the way, you shouldn't do. You do, and doing all those things in a playful way that's good for your health.
That brings up a great point we should talk about. A lot of times people will mix a sunscreen in with their moisturizer and with their foundation. And I don't think that they understand they're lowering the SPF value of that sunscreen. And that's why you don't want to do that.
No, lowering or deactivating the sunscreen. The integrations between formulations is, I think, the new frontier that we have to study in dermatology, because people are doing this and doctors are doing it too. They're saying, put a little bit of this with that, or, and as a chemist, I know some of those things that people do innocently and thinking it doesn't make any difference can make a massive difference. You could even knock the sunscreen out. You can deactivate the film that it forms on the skin, so you're left with big holes in the sunscreen that you're using, or you can inactivate it altogether.
And also the products that you put on before you put on your sunscreen can also affect the sunscreen. Sure. And I think that's why, with Skin Type Solutions, we do custom skincare regimens for each of the 16 skin types. And my whole talk about that is how the way you layer the products really matters. And I know you put a lot of thought into that. And when you designed your products, and that's one of the reasons why you have the numbers and everything.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how things can inactivate each other and what thought you have to put into that when you're making a whole regimen.
Sure. But first, could I say one of the things I love most of all about Skin Type Solutions is the fact that you, as an experienced, multiple published dermatologist, actually sit down and work out those routines, those regimens for the patients based on all the brands that you receive and experiment with. And no, that is unique, Leslie. Nowhere in the world have I come across anywhere where the thought has gone so much into creating these regimens for people by a dermatologist, and not just any dermatologist. I mean, you created the whole concept of skin typing. It's revolutionized skincare, and so many people here are grateful, including to you for doing that. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's unique and rare, and that's why you get such outstanding results. But coming back to mixing and matching formulations, I'll give you a perfect example. Sunscreens, including zinc oxide, need to be a little bit alkaline. They function in that range. And if you're using a very acidic product, like a really high dose vitamin C, just underneath it, you can change the pH of the sunscreen formulation to acidic, which means it starts to literally separate on the skin. So that's one example of something you just don't want to do. And I think people need to understand the work that goes into making sure that everything that they use sequentially on their skin is thought through either by the company who are making the formulation or the dermatologist who's prescribing it.
Absolutely. So I talk a lot about how your cleanser affects your pH. So if you're going to use more of a soap foaming cleanser, that's more alkaline. And then if you do that and then you put a low pH vitamin C on, it's not going to penetrate as well or absorb as well because it has to be that low pH. But then you put your moisturizer on top, then it brings the pH back up. So in your scenario you're talking about, we could, depending on your skin type, let's say they're a dry resistant pigmented wrinkle type of type 15, then you could do a low pH cleanser like a glycolic acid cleanser and put on a vitamin C that's a low pH, then wait and put on your moisturizer which raises your pH back up, and then it wouldn't affect your sunscreen. But if you leave out the moisturizer in this scenario, then you're affecting your sunscreen. And that's why every step matters, and people shouldn't skip steps. And that's why I'm not a fan of the skin cycling business where they're doing one thing one day and another thing another day. The science doesn't work out with that.
It doesn't work out. I see people do this all the time with TikTok trends and, even dermatologists coming out trying to be cool and trying to sort of pay lip service to these trends that we know full well are either not helpful at all or useless to your skin or actually harmful. So we need to stop that and start thinking what you do most of the time is the outcome that you'll get. So if you practice sun protection every day, solar repair every night, you will have great skin your whole life. You don't need to experiment. And
I agree. You and I agree again. Surprise, surprise. I tell my patients, and it's like going to a health spa once a year and working out and eating right in that week, and then coming back and eating horrible the rest of the year. That's not going to be as good as eating right every single day. No. And so what you put on your skin every day is nourishing your skin in the same way that what you put in your mouth is nourishing your body. And that needs to be consistently correct.
Exactly. Or working out, in a way that's right for your body, and achieving those fitness health outcomes. It's consistency over time.
Right. And again, with the skin typing system, there's 16 different things that people need. So what bothers me about the influencers or celebrities or whatever saying this product is great, it doesn't work for everybody. That might not be right for you at all.
Exactly. We're seeing that, and we're stopping people from truly getting the help they need. I always say, journalists often ask me, what's your hero skincare product? Or what's the most important product you need to use? And I always say, it depends. It depends on your skin and what it needs at that time, and short term, medium term, and long term. There's got to be a plan. And I don't think the average person is able to do that without assistance. So I think the most important thing you can do for your skin is have a skin consultation with a dermatologist. Go on Skin Type Solutions and take the quiz. It's so empowering. And let someone who's spent, decades studying this solve the problems for you.
And it's going to save you so much time and money by doing it right in the first place, instead of having a lot of products in your bathroom that you never use. Speaking of favorite products, you have so many wonderful ones. We've talked about your sunscreen that I love, but tell me, what are some other favorites that you have? I know you have a great vitamin C, and I know you have so many different ones, so it's hard to know which to start. So I'll let you pick which one you want to talk about.
Well, about 30 years ago, we were the very first skincare company in the world to incorporate niacinamide into a skincare serum, skincare formulation. And that came about because a dermatopathologist who, as you know, is a dermatologist who studies skin diseases in great depth, named Professor Diona Damian at Sydney University, released a landmark study where she showed that topical niacinamide helped prevent photoimmunosuppression. So after the sunscreen, the very next product we created was this anti-photoimmunosuppression, or immune boosting, we like to say, serum based on niacinamide. And it's so interesting to see the rise of niacinamide. It's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. But like all of the skin's own vitamins, minerals, and proteins and so on, they need to be at the right concentrations with their cohort. So we found over the years that using vitamin B complex that features niacinamide is more potent, more effective, more anti-inflammatory, more immunoprotective than just niacinamide by itself. So that's one of my next favorite products. I think in terms of antioxidants, I remember a piece of research years and years ago that very clearly outlined the skin's antioxidant system. And I have a bit of an issue with just saying, vitamin C is all you need. It's not true. It's not how it works in the skin. Vitamin C works with vitamin E, works with vitamin A, and they all interact and they all recycle each other, and they all ebb and flow in terms of what's happening with the skin's internal, external processes. So we created an antioxidant category that uses all of the skin's own antioxidants. So vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, combined with a whole bunch of enzymes like superoxide dismutase and glutathione and so on, combined with compounds like melanin. Now, melanin's also an antioxidant. It's a fascinating substance. So my next favorite product would be that group of antioxidants that are what we call skin identical. So following the same combinations of antioxidants that are found naturally in the skin. And the interesting thing, Leslie, is we don't get any irritation when we use those combinations. With vitamin C, people can have adverse reactions to high-dose vitamin C because it's not user-friendly.
Right. I have rosacea and I'm a stinger, so I can't use a lot of the vitamin Cs. So which exact product names are you talking about that have this antioxidant blend in them?
Yeah. So number 2, the light creme, has all of those skin antioxidants combined with a new antioxidant called Carnosine, which is amazing for pigmentation. It's so helpful. It's a peptide. And then we have number 2, the serum, which contains all of those skin identical antioxidants in the same concentrations that they're found naturally in your skin.
I always like to explain to our listeners, because we have a lot of people who watch that aren't scientists, that the reason you need a lot of different antioxidants is there are different kinds. They're water soluble and oil soluble. So what that means is some dissolve in water and some dissolve in oil. Yes. And when you think of a cell, you've got the inside of a cell is water and the membrane of the cell is oil. So things like vitamin C can't get through the cell membrane into the cell, while fat soluble ones can. So that's one of the many reasons you need lots of different antioxidants. And then the other thing I like to explain is that once vitamin C, so a free radical is an oxygen molecule that has an unpaired electron. And the way something like vitamin C would work is it would give away its electron to calm down that free radical. But once vitamin C gives its electron away, it doesn't have any more. It's like I'm a sports fan. You throw the football and you don't have the football anymore. So that's why you need other people on your team, other antioxidants on your team to get more electrons out of the way.
Yay team. I love that. That's such a brilliant analogy.
But everybody understands the team. They call them network antioxidants, but really it's just everybody needs to pitch in. And that's what your skin has, is so many antioxidants. So people will say, well, why do I need more if my skin has natural ones? And I don't think they realize that the minute the sun hits your skin, I forget how long it takes you to use up your antioxidants, but it's like 10 or 15 minutes in the sun. Do you remember how long it is?
Yeah, I think it's about 20 minutes. And the other thing is that as we age, naturally, we make less of those antioxidants anyway. So they're being suppressed by the sun. And as we get older, we're making less of them. So we definitely need topical supplementation. We call it topical skin nutrition. We need to supply those nutrients to the skin. It's interesting because when I was a student many decades ago, we were taught that the skin is an impervious barrier. Nothing can get through. And of course, today we know almost the exact opposite is true, that depending on what you put on the skin, it is selectively permeable. And one of the things the skin loves is topical antioxidant supplements. We very rarely see an adverse reaction because your skin loves it and needs it.
I have some niacinamide questions for you. I love niacinamide. I think it might be one of my favorite ingredients. It's so fascinating. It does so many things. It gives cells energy. Yeah. It works on the PPAR receptors. It's anti-inflammatory. It does so many things. But there's a lot of talk on the internet about what you can't mix with niacinamide, and that if you put niacinamide serum with a vitamin C, they're going to inactivate each other. And I remember discussing that with you, and you said that isn't true. I think you told me, and I've looked, and I can't find any evidence that it would inactivate it. So it's okay to use niacinamide and vitamin C together, right?
The short answer is that it depends what they're with and what sort of formulation it's in. So, for example, if you use niacinamide and ascorbic acid together, it forms a compound called niacinamide ascorbate, or ascorbyl niacinamide. And that's not bioavailable to humans. So, we can't use that. But you wouldn't put those two compounds in the same formulation because they will form that compound. So I think niacinamide in an optimally formulated product, it by itself or optimally with all the other B group vitamins, that's one formulation. That's really good. Put it on your skin. Wait a minute. Then I like to use a lot of the esters, because the esters to me are more stable and they don't tend to form compounds like ascorbic acid. They're much easier to work with. And the skin, in a kind of time release manner, will break them down and convert them to vitamin C as they use. So my advice would be use your niacinamide vitamin B serum first. Wait a minute. Use your antioxidant compound next. And by the way, you don't need huge 20, 30% vitamin C ascorbic acid. It's not necessary, and it tends to throw the balance of antioxidants in the skin out of whack, and it tends to form complexes with other compounds like niacinamide. So I like to use the esters in a separate formulation for that very reason.
And the esters, you're talking about the different types of vitamin C esters.
There are so many now. Vitamin C that's attached to an oil molecule. So the oil molecules cleave by enzymes in the skin, and you end up with ascorbic acid. And it's delivered in a much more skin-friendly way. You don't get the stinging, the burning, the irritation.
Right. So that way it's oil soluble to get through the skin, and then you said it's cleaved, and then it can be inside the cell. That's interesting. What else is in that B complex along with your niacinamide?
Oh, a whole bunch of vitamin. Vitamin B likes to be in its own family. So things like dexpanthenol, for example, which is an anti-inflammatory found naturally in the skin. Riboflavin, which helps with melanin synthesis. All of the B group vitamins are there, and they all have specific helpful functions in the skin. And they also help niacinamide do its job better.
Well, all of a sudden in the U.S., we're hearing a lot of excitement about B vitamins, and they've been around forever, but for some reason, people are just now starting to talk about it. So I don't know if somebody's marketing it or why everyone knows all of a sudden.
I think we're starting to study how these things work naturally in the skin. Vitamin C is another interesting example. We know that it works better when it's with its cohort of all the other skin antioxidant vitamins. And we now know vitamin B is the same. It works better. Niacinamide works better when it's with all the other B group vitamins. So we're just starting to understand that's the case. And now we're starting to study why that's the case.
Right. So you have all the important anti-aging products like the vitamin C's and the retinols and the sunscreens. In Miami, we have a lot of melasma. So in addition to aging, we have to worry about pigmentation. So what I thought was fascinating about some of your products is you have some things in there to treat melasma that I haven't seen, like melanin in the product. Iron oxides, of course, I have seen that. That's what the pigment is, and it helps protect you from blue light. But tell us a little bit more about the melanin and does the hydrolyzed keratin, does that play a role with protecting the skin and all these other things that are in there that would help people with melasma protect their skin from the sun?
Sure. Over many years, we saw that despite patients being told and complying with the request to use sunscreen every day, their melasma wasn't improving. So we started to think, well, what is it that the sunscreens are not doing? They're not getting burnt, they're not getting skin cancer, and yet it's not helping with their melasma, and theoretically it should. Now, as we all now know, there's more to melasma than UV. UV is one trigger, but so is visible light, and so is infrared. So we realized that our sunscreens at that time did not protect you from visible light or infrared, and to this day, sunscreens don't do that. So we had to develop with this, we call it zinc fusion. So it's fusing zinc with iron oxides and including melanin as well. And interestingly, we use a synthetic blue dye called aeroglossine. The aeroglossine is photoprotective in the visible light spectrum. So just having that combination, zinc oxide, iron oxide, aeroglossine, and melanin, that combination of dyes and pigments protects you not just from UV, which we need, but also from visible light, which we can see, and infrared, which we can feel as heat, because all of those spectra are implicated in melasma. So just by giving them a totally solar protective sunscreen as opposed to just a UV protective sunscreen, the melasma starts to improve, which was the first step. Then we looked at, what can we do to help prevent melanin, the overproduction of melanin to begin with. And as you know, niacinamide is really helpful, and the B group vitamins are more helpful when you put them together in terms of stopping the transfer of melanin throughout the melanosome and then into the surrounding tissues. So that was the next thing. Antioxidants, of course, are incredibly important because oxidation plays a big part in melasma, even down to things like barrier repair. When you repair the skin's barrier, these little carbon particles called, PM 2.5s that are in diesel fuel and so on, they actually get in your skin and they irritate your skin and they become a trigger for melasma. Changing your skin's pH was helpful. The skin's pigmentary system tends to be more stable when the skin's at a fairly acidic level. And of course, then the role of DNA repair and retinoids, we know, are also important. So all of those 6 steps that we mentioned earlier have a role to play in pigmentation. One ingredient that we've just finished an interesting study on is Carnosine, which is a dipeptide. And it seems to have a very powerful effect on suppressing excessive melanin production and also helping to invade existing pigmentation, that's the tricky part, don't you find? That because the pigment can be in various depths of the skin, and you might be able to get the superficial stuff easily, and then the deeper stuff's harder to move. Carnosine appears to be able to, over time, to be able to fade existing pigmentation, which is a real challenge, and we don't know why or how it's doing that. So we're starting to study it.
Oh, so we don't know if it's a part 2 blocker or tyrosinase inhibitor or anti-inflammatory. We don't know the mechanism?
Not yet.
Oh, interesting.
It often happens like that. It's going to be exciting, yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to find out how it works, because that's carnosine is interesting. Now, but what about hydrolyzed keratin? Keratin is the protein that your skin makes. That's what hair and fingernails are made out of. That's what your skin cells are. How does hydrolyzed keratin help? And it's not the same keratin as when you get a keratin in your hair to straighten it, right?
No.
It's different.
Well, as you know, Leslie, there are many, many types of keratin found naturally in the skin. It's that very hard protein that forms a physical barrier that stops moisture loss, stops chemicals penetrating. As we mentioned earlier, it stops these carbon particles from getting into the skin. So it forms a physical shield, and we combine it with a nanomaterial called aluminum silicate that reinforces the skin barrier. So that combination of melanin and aluminum silicate is a fantastic physical barrier that we need.
I haven't talked in any of my videos yet about pollution and what that does to your skin. So our viewers don't really know much about that. But what he's talking about is pollution makes all these ingredients that get in your skin and cause, there's a lot of evidence to show that they cause aging and skin cancer too. So if you live in a place with a lot of car exhaust or cigarette smoke or any kind of pollution, which a lot of us do, there's a movement now to try to prevent damage from that pollution. And so the antioxidants will help, the keratin will help. Are there other ingredients that will help protect you from that?
Well, melanin in itself, we all know that melanin's our natural skin pigment, and it varies according to your racial skin type and genetics. But interestingly, we find that melanin in and of itself, because melanin is a fascinating substance. It's this inert protein that we didn't know what it actually did, but it actually is an antioxidant in itself. And we find it's a very important antioxidant for prevention and reversal of sun damage. You can't be allergic to it. It doesn't cause irritation, and it does a lot, in terms of preventing free radicals forming and absorbing, I guess, the energy that's going to give your skin problems. So
I've been to your lab in Australia, and it's amazing, and it's so fun. He has all these pictures on the walls of cells under the microscope that give it this wonderful atmosphere. But how much fun is it that you get to go around and try all these things and mix things together and see how it comes out? Tell us a little bit about those who want to live vicariously through you. What is that like? Tell us about a day in your life when you're trying to make a new formulation.
Sure. So Rationale headquarters is our new complex. It's in a place called Kyneton, which is about an hour outside of Melbourne. And the reason we chose this area is that we use the mineral water from this region in our products. And it's very rich in calcium, which, as you know, calcium is good for your skin. So we use the water here, and we now have a very large research facility. So I always say Rationale is not a skincare company that does research. We're a research company that makes skincare. So research is the heart of everything that we do, going back for 35 plus years. So what we do now, Leslie, is we study areas of need, and a big area of need for us at the moment is a new concept that we call geocentricity. What that means is it's where you are in the world. So we have this displaced genetic populations all over the world. Someone with fair skin finds themselves in the tropics, or someone with very, very dark African skin finds themselves in Scandinavia. And it causes all these skin problems because their skin's genetically not evolved to deal with the climatic or environmental challenges. So a lot of our research now, as our brand has gone global, is around this geocentric approach to skincare and what people actually need. So, we've got our genetic codes, what we're born with. We can't change it, but we can enhance it epigenetically, which we can talk about a little bit if you like. But then we've got this geocentric influence overriding everything, which is where you are in the world will influence how your skin behaves, often not for the better. So we're looking at things like in Southeast Asia, where in Singapore, for example, pollution plays a huge role, not only pollution, but the sun, humidity, heat, all of these things. Now, we're in North America. People in New York and Boston have unique challenges they have to face with the cold and pollution. So geocentricity is a big area of research for us. So at the moment, my day is, I think people think I come in and play with lipsticks all day. I wish, but that's not the way My life is, most of my working days spent reading research papers or writing research papers. I oversee a research team of formulation scientists, and we'll have a meeting once a week and we talk about, okay, here's an interesting area of need. We're finding that people in tropical climates with extreme heat and who are using sunscreens and so on have got pigmentary issues, that they're suffering from hyperpigmentation. What can be the cause? Well, this study suggested there's carbon particles in the air in polluted cities with high humidity. So we need to create a lightweight sunscreen for them, because again, they've got to love it. They're not going to love it if it's heavy and greasy. They're going to love it if it's lightweight and it feels like water on their skin. So that's kind of how Rationale research works. We study skin needs, skin problems, areas of need, depending on where you are in the world. Then we come up with a theoretical solution. We create formulations, and then the fun and game starts, which is, getting a formulation that people love, that's stable, that does what it needs to do, and they're getting it through that process of registration and finally production.
And you're very detail oriented, so I want the audience to get a feel for that. So, for example, there's a lot of zinc sunscreens out there, so many. But tell us about zinc. Not all zinc is created equal, and I know you're a passionate zinc lover. So
yes.
Tell me about the differences in zincs and sunscreens and why it really matters, the coated and the non-coated and all that stuff.
Sure. So let's talk about zinc in general, first of all. So zinc oxide has been used as a sunscreen since the ancient Egyptians. They used to put it on their eyes and on their faces, and it would protect them from the sun. It's also antimicrobial, so it helps prevent infections and so on. So it has a long and ancient history. Zinc oxide is still the gold standard in diaper rash treatment, for example. So we know that it's very, very safe. It has a long history of safety, and it has this proven mechanism of action as a sunscreen, as an antioxidant, and as an anti-inflammatory. I thought there's nothing not to love about zinc oxide except its aesthetics. It's a white pigment. It's got to be embedded in a very thick paste-like formulation. Now, over the years, skincare companies have got better at formulating zinc oxide, but they still can't eliminate that white cast on the skin. They still can't eliminate that cloying, heavy feeling on the skin. So our challenge was, how do we take what's good and make it perfect? How do we make it so beautiful that no one can resist using it? And the answer was to look at the problem with zinc oxide, like all sunscreens, is it didn't protect from visible light or infrared, only UV. So what did we have to do? Well, we had to combine it with iron oxide for a start, so we get the visible light protection. We have to combine it with a whole bunch of other metallic oxide compounds and a synthetic blue dye that will make it protective in the visible light and the infrared spectra. So by changing what's called the action spectra of zinc oxide, or how much of the sun's energy it could protect from, we were also changing its aesthetics. So we have to use, instead of one particle size of zinc, we had to use multiple particle sizes of zinc. Some are UVA protected, some are UVB protected, some protected visible light and infrared. The iron oxide's the same thing. We had to use it in various combinations. So getting those details right, they say the devil's in the details. Well, I think the angel's in the details too. So we made sure that the formulation did what it needed to do, to give you that broad, across all the sun's energy protection. But also, it was invisible on your skin, but it made your skin look dewy and fresh and light and luminous, and people love it. So, and that was a journey over 35 years.
I remember you working on that for years, and I remember for a while you even made me kind of a yellowish one that would cover my rosacea. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. That was
I'm the only one who I'm the only one who wanted yellow, but it was at the time I was really pink, and it would even my color out.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was where we started learning about iron oxides. What they do and why they help with rosacea, because as you know, rosacea is triggered by infrared, which is heat, and visible light, which is even indoor light can be a trigger. And I also suffer from rosacea, so we share that too. And, there are so many things that we should be able to do that we can't do. And it's very hard. I don't know how you feel, but I find anything occlusive triggers my rosacea as well. So if I put something waterproof on my skin, or something heavy or oily on my skin, that tends to trigger my rosacea as well. So I think we're learning so much more about rosacea.
I forgot to ask you, what is your Bauman skin type?
Oh my God, yeah, I do. I'm a dry, sensitive, pigmented, and wrinkled. So
I thought you were going to say oily after you said that about the sunscreen.
I want to ask you, is it possible to be what I call post-oily? It's because I used to have oily skin. Now it feels dry. And I'm wondering, is it seborrheic dermatitis? Is it, you can have seb derm and rosacea at the same time. Is that right?
Yeah, they're two completely different conditions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I bet you're oily skin. Yeah, your skin type can change with seasons, with your hormones, with stress, with different things. So people are not always the same skin type. You're talking more like an OSPW, and I'm a DSNW. I'm a number 4.
I've just found that avoiding anything that's oil-based, anything oily tends to help me. And that's really, really interesting because that would definitely reinforce your theory that my skin's oily, because if you put oil on oil, it tends to, occlude and cause problems. And so, rather than a regime for dry skin, I found myself gravitating towards a solution that's based on oily skin, and it seems to be working for me. It's great. I love it.
Right.
So I'm using Bauman skin types with Rationale. It's amazing how you can select from our range using the Bauman skin types. It's incredible.
Yeah, the great thing is your range covers all 16 types, which is really, really nice. And that's why we're so excited to be offering your products on our website. But one thing I've found that's so funny, over 220 dermatologists in the U.S. use our system. And when they first come online, they take their quiz and they find out their skin type. And many of them will be like you and say, well, I don't think I'm oily. I think I'm dry. And I say the quiz has been validated, used a sebum meter and measured sebum levels. And we've absolutely proven that the quiz is valid. So just trust it, try it. And then they'll use the products and they're like, wow, these are dermatologists saying, I can't believe how good my skin looks. I was wrong about my skin type.
Yeah.
So 80% of people, even dermatologists, are often wrong about their skin type. And it's usually the oily dry that gets them.
That gets them. Yeah, exactly. So, finding out for me today, oily and using the products that are, very, very low in oil or don't have any oil phase at all. That works for me. And I agree, Leslie, the system works. I don't understand why the whole world isn't on their Bauman skin typing solution.
Well, hopefully it's in the textbooks. Hopefully they will be soon. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about creating products?
I think that one of the biggest areas of research for us in recent years is epigenetics. And what that means is that, we don't have to be victims of our genes anymore where our skin's concerned. So, both my parents had skin cancer, for example, had multiple lesions removed. I started doing what I'm doing when I was in my early 20s, and I'm 64 now. I don't have a single skin cancer. I've never had a problem with skin cancer at all, sun damage. And that proves that even when you have a genetic tendency to something, that gene does not have to be activated if you do all the right things, which is preventing sunburn, don't go in the sun, use a good solar protection repair skincare regimen, and you'll be fine. So I like to think of epigenetics as a message of hope, that if you do all the right things with your skin, you can have great skin your whole life, no matter what your genetic skin tendencies are.
I love talking about epigenetics. I think it is the coolest thing. So I'm going to tell the audience what that means. Epi means above, like epidermis is the top layer of your skin. So epigenetics is the top part of your genes. And the way I explain it to people is your genes have these little hats. They're methyl groups, but in the chemistry world, but they're little hats. And those hats come on and off and change how your genes are expressed. And we can control those hats. And by doing things like eating broccoli and cauliflower and cruciferous vegetables and lowering stress and using the right skincare products and avoiding sun, we can affect the expression of these methyl groups, or these hats are there or not. So that is what Richard's talking about, is we may have certain genes that are not good, but we can affect how they're expressed by our habits. So this is why so many people out there are doing the diets where you go 12 hours and fast, or everybody's being better about sleep, because we're all and diet and fruit and vegetables and all that, because people are starting to understand how important epigenetics are. And I have 2 boys. I know you have a son too. The craziest thing is that what you eat when you're pregnant affects your baby's epigenetics, and you pass it along.
You do. It's incredible, dating back to times of famine and, people's, the babies were born heavy, the babies were born with big appetites. It's so interesting how it's influenced. And with our skin, I like to say that whether you're having healthy, glowing skin your whole life, it's in your hands. And I think that's the message of epigenetics. It's a message of hope and proactivity.
I think so too. And one other thing I notice in my practice when patients come in, if they had acne or skin problems when they were younger, they're actually at an advantage now because they saw dermatologists early and they got on a Retin-A or sunscreen or retinol or whatever it was. People who had great skin their whole life, by the time they're in their 50s, they're at a disadvantage because they weren't on all that preventative stuff. So just because you have great skin out there doesn't mean you shouldn't be on a preventative regimen up to protect you from pollution and sun and all these other things.
Well, have a look at some of these beautiful actresses and models from the 60s, where everybody was tanning. And we look glamorous and we look, healthier when we're a little bit tanned. But I say fake it, because if you want to know the consequences, have a look at how those women look now. The women that tanned and were so glamorous when they're young, now they just look old and wrinkled and saggy and sun damaged, and it's too late. So that's a fascinating message of hope, Leslie. Like, the younger you start, and the kids with acne who have to see a dermatologist are at a distinct advantage over people who had perfect skin and didn't get any good skin advice when they were young.
Right, and wear your sunscreen every day. That's why you need a beautiful one like one of yours, because that's the best thing you can do for your skin. The number 1 anti-aging cream in the world is a sunscreen, and nobody thinks about it like that.
No, no, they don't. And it's something you should research. If you want to research sunscreens. Find the best one. Find the one that gives you that whole protection from UV, visible light, infrared. Find one that has DNA repair enzymes in it. Find one. Do the research. It's really fun. It's interesting. It's liberating. And be prepared to spend on a good one. If you're going to spend on one thing, spend on a really good Zinc Fusion sunscreen, and it'll be the best investment you could possibly make in your skin, apart from seeing a dermatologist and getting some good skin advice.
I agree with you, because those pigments are not cheap, and if you want good, beautiful pigments in your tinted sunscreens, you gotta pay for that. I've always told people that the color cosmetics, the pigments, the price does matter. You may be able to find sometimes inexpensive, hand creams that are okay, but when it comes to pigments, you really need the good pigment.
No, and the work that goes into testing them, and it's years and years of very expensive, because sunscreens are regulated as drugs, and so they should be, because we're saying these things help prevent you getting cancer and make you look younger. They're drug claims, and so we need to have that level of rigor around the formulation, and then layer onto that cosmetic elegance. You definitely get what you pay for with sunscreens. There's that old story about, the best things in life are free, and the second best things are very, very, very expensive. I think it's the same with sun protection. The best advice: don't get sunburnt, don't go in the sun. That's free, But then the next best thing, which is a Zinc Fusion sunscreen, is very expensive, and it's worth it.
Right. It'll save you a lot of money in the long run on facelifts and lasers and all of that. Yeah. I'm going to put a link down in the description to the Rationale product collection so everybody can take a look and see what your products are, and make sure you check out the sunscreens and see all the beautiful colors that they have when you go to that collection. Well, Richard, thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed it. I always learn so much from you. You're always cutting edge with whatever's going on with technology. So it's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to see you, Leslie. Thank you so much for your interest, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
Bye, everyone.